Hello and welcome back. My name is Erin Ferguson, and this is my video series about creating the art for a 2D video game. In today's video, I'm a little disappointed because I had planned to test out some new video gadgets that I ordered from Amazon this week, but they're not here yet. We got and when I say we, I mean mostly I got super into Amazon Prime Day this week. Which, I do every year, let's be honest. Pretty much any event where I can buy stuff I don't need for cheap, I am there for it. Black Friday is one of my favorite days of the year. I love spending money on stuff I don't need. And so Prime Day, I am their marketing team, I am their ideal customer, basically. I am willing to spend money. So anyway, of course, Prime Day was this week, and I decided I wanted to order some things to up my YouTube game, and so one thing I got was a lapel mic, and that did arrive. But the other thing I got was a lighting kit, because if you've watched any of my videos where I actually show my face, when I'm recording in my office, which is kind of where I have to record because I have the only mic I have of any decent quality is this USB microphone that I'm using right now. But our office is super dark and orange, and so the video quality is not great. So I finally went out and bought a lighting kit, which will also allow me to film in other places if I decide, for instance, I ever want to film some more traditional kind of art. I have one of the lights came with a boom arm that you can use to adjust it, over a table or something like that. So that could be really useful in the future. But like I said, it's not here yet, and I really shouldn't be so entitled because I'm sure Amazon got about a bazillion orders over Prime Day, and their poor employees probably haven't slept. But I'm I pay for 2 days shipping, dang it, and I wanted it here in 2 days, but it did not arrive. It's not supposed to be here until tomorrow, which is a Saturday. So between Tuesday and Saturday, that's a long time to wait in this day and age for those of us who have gotten really accustomed to 2-day shipping. I did test out the lapel mic for a little bit yesterday though, and I'm a little bit on the fence about it. I just tried it out with my phone, and it does a really good job of canceling out background noise, which is nice, especially, you can hear it right now probably. My daughter's in the room kind of doing her thing, and so you can hear her, shuffling around the room. And so I feel like the lapel mic does a pretty good job of that, but I also feel like the sound isn't as bright as I like. It feels a little bit soft and flat. So we'll see. At least, it can follow you around, which is great. So if I am doing live drawing, traditional kind of art, stuff like that, I think it could be really useful for that. So anyway, I will continue to test that out and see if I can make it work. I was thinking about using it for this video just to give it, a longer test run, but I couldn't get it to work with the computer yet, so I've got to fiddle with that a little more. But believe it or not, today's video actually isn't really supposed to be about my Amazon Prime Day purchases, as much as I love talking about them. It's actually, I had a different topic in mind today, and while I discuss that, what's going on in the background is I am drawing assets that are going to go in that big, nautical mansion. I'm pretty sure I drew it on a video. It's the big, ship house, the ship that has been converted into, a giant mansion. Anyway, so I am working on all of the furnishings that will go inside of that during today's video. So if you are actually watching it, you can watch me draw those. Otherwise, I'm just going to be talking, so you can put me on in the background if you want. But today's topic was actually inspired by Netflix, of all things. And I've been watching a show on Netflix, and I'm wondering if I should name it or not. Not that anybody would really care. I don't know. Maybe I'll keep it anonymous, but I will say this. I generally don't love reality TV shows, with a few exceptions. The Great British Baking Show is amazing, but for the most part, I feel like most American reality TV shows are just really dramatic, and I just can't handle them. I get secondhand embarrassment for the people on there. And I have a really hard time watching them. But there is one, a Netflix original that has come out that I started watching because it's art related. I'll say that much. It's art related. And so I'm kind of enjoying it for that. But I'm also, some of the characters, or contestants, I guess you could say, some of the contestants in this competition are pretty enjoyable human beings to watch do their thing. Others less so, as you would expect from any reality TV show, aside from the Great British Baking Show where everyone is awesome. But the one thing I have noticed that a few of them have in common is that their identities, their personal sense of identity is really tied up in their work, to the point that they can't accept criticism of any kind. And to be fair, when I was younger, not that I'm very old now, but when I was younger and I would draw something or write something and someone would give me some criticism, would, tell me that there was something that wasn't working for them, or something didn't make sense, or wasn't reading right, it was hard. I remember hearing that would make me feel almost, like embarrassed, like kind of humiliated almost, because it felt like a direct attack of me as opposed to my work. Because at that point, I still hadn't, I guess I wasn't self-aware enough or whatever. I hadn't really made the distinction between me and my work. Because this thing, that you made, it started out as something internal, and now you have made it into something external. And it feels, or at least it can often feel, like there's still like an umbilical cord, attaching it to you. Like it's still you, it's just outside of your body, but still very much attached to you. And to some extent that's true. I mean, artists, or any kind of creators really do need to be passionate about what they're doing, because it shows, it shows in the work. If they're not passionate about what they're making, well, nobody else is going to be either. So to say that you need to completely detach, I think is probably unrealistic, but also not necessarily healthy. You do need to be excited about the thing you're doing, or you might as well be doing something else. But that being said, you are not your work. Regardless, just because you made something, just because you produced a masterpiece, that in and of itself does not raise your worth. At the same time, just because you produce something that's utter garbage, it does not lower your worth either. Your worth remains constant regardless of what you make. Regardless of how beautiful or how awful, the creations of your hands are, your worth remains constant. It helps, I think, sometimes to think about your loved ones, whether it's a parent or a spouse or your kids or whatever, and, ask yourself, would they love me more if my work was better, or would they love me less if my work was worse? Well, no. I mean, if they are truly good, supportive people, no, it doesn't make a lick of difference. I certainly wouldn't love my husband any less if, he made something that was totally unappealing. It doesn't matter. But for some reason, when strangers, criticize our work, suddenly we feel worse about ourselves. And to be fair, like, it's easy to say, you are not your work. But sometimes it's harder to actually apply that mindset. But I think, practice helps. Practice taking criticism can really help. Over the years, I could fill a number of drawers with the number of rejections and critiques and just failures. Like, if each failure was written on a piece of paper, I could fill boxes and boxes with all of the critiques and the failures. Whereas, the successes would be a much, much, much smaller box. And after a while, it just stops hurting, when you fail. After a while, you do, some people call it a thick skin, but you do sort of develop an immunity almost, to where people can say almost anything. And I really haven't faced too many internet trolls or anything like that. It's happened a few times where somebody will leave just kind of a snarky, nasty comment on, a profile of mine, whether that was Instagram or YouTube or whatever it was. Somebody would leave, and it's not, like I said, it's only happened a few times. And I do delete those comments because I don't really want to like foster that kind of a culture like on my pages, on my personal pages. But I couldn't tell you what they said. I don't remember. I just plain don't remember what the criticism was or whatever. It was just something nasty and whatever. I just deleted it. And I haven't really, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it since until I started, getting ready to do this video. And I'm like, oh, I guess I've had that happen before. And I think a lot of that, it's not just because I've, just got this super thick hide, but after a while, you just start to realize that you are not your work. Like, even if somebody says something nasty about your work, even if it is totally uncalled for, it in no way changes. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change how much you're worth. It doesn't change your skill level. And it certainly doesn't change what anybody who matters, thinks of you. So I just thought that was, an important message, because that was something I don't think I understood, especially when I was a younger artist, first starting out, especially, high school. High school, they don't exactly critique you very hard there. The most important thing is that you show up and pick up a pencil. But in college, you get harder critiques. And actually, I am just remembering now one of the critiques I got at one point that seemed really hurtful at the time. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, Erin, you poor fragile baby. But I'll share it with you because it illustrates my point. So I was in this, it was in a more advanced illustration class. So at this point, the teacher was no longer really like critiquing us. He was more acting like a moderator and would just sort of sit back and let us, critique each other and just make sure we were being nice. And so anyways, I'm in this class and I was doing a series of drawings, like kids going on adventures in hot air balloons. That was kind of my project for this class. And at one point I was drawing this hot air balloon and I wanted it to be covered in like a star pattern, like the fabric of the actual balloon, wanted it to have a star pattern. And I wasn't super great at Photoshop at the time, and so I didn't know how to do like repeating patterns. And so I just painstakingly hand drew this star pattern on this balloon. And I was just really pleased with it because it took ages. And I just thought it just elevated this piece, to the next level to have this star pattern on there. Anyway, so, show up to class, and there was this girl there who wasn't actually in our class, but had just decided to visit that day. She'd been in the class before, and I guess decided to pop in, and decided to contribute to our discussion. So it's my turn now, for my critique, and I get up in front of the class, and I'm showing this piece that I'd been working on, and the first thing, she does, her hand shoots up and she says, like, you need to draw that star pattern by hand instead of using, a Photoshop brush. Like, it just looks so amateur, to use the Photoshop brush. And I was just like, but I did draw it by hand. I don't know if Photoshop still has like a repeating star pattern brush, but they did for the longest time. I guess I'd have to open up Photoshop and check. But that was always, this faux pas, right? You weren't supposed to use any of the Photoshop pattern brushes, like the leaf brush or the star brush or any of their others. And I didn't, I painstakingly drew those stars one at a time by hand. And that was her first, comment, was that it looked really amateur because I'd used this, Photoshop brush. And so I'm, up there stammering, well, actually, I drew them by hand. And she's like, well, they need more variation or something because it just looks, totally amateur. And to be fair, still is, actually, I still know who this person is, still is a way better artist than me. She was super good and I'm sure knew what she was talking about, but I remember just being mortified, just absolutely mortified because I had spent so much time on this and just my blood, sweat, and tears into this piece. And the only thing, the main comment was that my stars looked very amateurish. And I just remember at the time taking I took that one pretty hard. Now, thinking back on it, it just seems so silly because now I would just, who cares? Who cares? Like, that wasn't the focus of the piece. I don't really think it was detracting from the focus of the piece. Now, granted, I'm sure if I were to go back and look at that piece, it probably wasn't very good. But for me at the time, it was certainly a decent, compared with my other work, it was decent. We'll put it that way. So, now a few years in the future, a little bit older and wiser, I think that's that's a message that past Erin probably really needed to hear, is that you are not your work. Your work and your worth are not actually entwined. They are two completely separate things. So anyway, hopefully that'll resonate with you if you are a creative type. And as always, I appreciate you watching my video. I will be back again next Friday with another one, hopefully with some new gear to test out. So we will see how that works. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week.